There are days that it's very hard for me to come on and record one of these episodes because my inner critic gets so loud and it tells me that I've been doing an awful job or a mediocre one at best. It whispers, "Who are you to speak about this?" There are days where I feel like I'm flunking at motherhood and that I am so far from achieving balance. There are days where I wonder what it would mean to give up. Today is one of those days. Hi there! If this is your first time here, welcome to the Parenthood and Relationship Podcast. I'm your host, Markella Kaplani, a psychologist, a parenthood and relationship coach, and a parent myself. Together we explore the transformative journey of parenthood and its profound impact on our relationship with ourselves, our partners, and our children so that we can be present and show up as we envision without having to do more. Let's get into today's episode. Today, I'm recording in embrace of this feeling of not enoughness. If you have ever felt similarly, I want you to know that I come on and I speak about dropping the perfection, the guilt, the shame. And although I feel all these things and I practice what I preach, it's not every day that I can be in that state of mind. There are days that I have an inner critic hovering over me, judging my every move, saying I'm not good enough, tempting me to throw in the towel. And while I had another topic that I was planning to air this week, I really wanted you to know that you're not alone. I wanted to come and speak about this while it's still burning my heart, because I think it's valuable that you know that you're not alone when you feel this way. And that people who seem to have it all together and that people who seem like they're getting a lot of things right are in the same boat. They really are. It's not just words. I want to give you ways to validate and normalize this roller coaster when you do get this way. And I hope that I can offer you gentle ways to embrace the pain on those days that you feel like this too. Let's begin by taking a deep breath together. Inhale slowly. Hold and exhale. The first step that I think is the most crucial when I get to this point is recognizing when the inner critic is speaking, dissociating a little bit from that voice and understanding that it is not us, but just a part of us that becomes so judgmental. It often just sneaks up on us, camouflaged as rational thought or constructive criticism even, as something that is going to help us become better versions of ourselves. It is not forgiving, but we're okay with it because we've been taught that this is the way that we push forward. Look at our schooling system. It will give you an F when you're not doing well. And this F comes with so much negativity, so many awful emotional, physical, practical consequences. And this is supposed to help you learn better. But is that how it really works? Are students who are consistently getting Fs inspired to do better and learn more? It actually works the opposite way. There's a stark difference between a critical voice that aims to tear us down and a constructive one that seeks to build us up. When you hear that voice telling you that you're not good enough, it's important to make this distinction. It's important to pause and to acknowledge the voice and to say, I hear you. This simple act of recognition can create a bit of a distance between you and the criticism, allowing you to assess it more objectively. We think that if we ignore the voice, if we go on about our day, if we fill our schedules and we're really busy, that we don't have time to really entertain the thought that it's not affecting us anymore. But that's not the case. It is so much better to recognize that it's there, to acknowledge its existence, but to also say, you are not me, so that we are able to then dispute these kinds of thoughts at a next level. What really then also becomes quite important is validation. For me, when I was in my lowest, it really felt like it was just me and that I shouldn't be feeling this way, that I should be so joyful and that everything should be flowing so well because that's what I was seeing all around me. It was not until I learned about matrescence and about this in-between space where you don't necessarily have some kind of a postpartum disorder, but you haven't found your footing and you're still adjusting. It took a while before I started to validate and normalize this process. And then after that, it became easier to be able to sit with the inner critic instead of try to kick it out or ignore it or give up and be fully immersed in it as if it's the truth. Validating our feelings means being able to say, it's okay to feel this way. And that can be incredibly powerful. Emotions are not inherently good or bad. They're simply signals. Feeling overwhelmed, feeling inadequate, or discouraged doesn't mean that we are unworthy or we're weak. It means we're human and we are struggling and there's a need that's not being met. And it's important that it is. And if it can't for whatever reason, at the bare minimum, it's important to recognize that this is a tough spot we find ourselves in and that it's okay that we feel this way. You're not alone in this experience. Many of us feel this way. It's part of the human condition, especially in motherhood and in the pursuit of balance, that we question, that we doubt, that we struggle. Society often portrays this ideal, this perfect parenting, this perfect living, but reality is far from that. Everyone struggles, everyone has bad days, everyone has an inner critic. We don't discuss it enough. We won't come on, and I haven't in the past, and talk about how awful these days feel. But they're there. So by normalizing this experience, we can alleviate some of the shame and the guilt that is associated with it. If we keep on telling ourselves that if I am good enough, if I am doing a good job, I should never be having these days. The fact that I am having these experiences means I am not good enough, means I am a fraud. That is black and white thinking. Something that I am very prone to, and I have worked and I'm still working very hard to be very, very conscious of it and apply specific skills to dispute that kind of thinking, the generalization, and the whole polarity in everything that happens. It's not either or. Because you're having a bad day in parenting doesn't make you a bad parent overall. Because you're having a bad period of time and phase doesn't make you a bad parent either. But if we make that mean something about our character, if we make that say something about who we are and about our intentions, then it's very difficult to get out of that black hole that we're digging for ourselves. On those particular tough days, embracing the pain can be a form of self-compassion. Instead of pushing away the discomfort, it's important that we try to sit with it. And that's what I'm exemplifying here today. I'm sitting here in my discomfort with you and with my inner critic that's like a black cloud over my head. A lot of times what helps is when I find a quiet space and I close my eyes and I allow myself to feel whatever it is that I'm feeling without judgment. Because there is judgment there involved as well to the fact that I feel so awful and I shouldn't be feeling this awful. So instead, it's important to say to ourselves, I feel really sad right now and it's okay. But now I want to share 6 practical strategies that help me during those difficult days. One of them is mindful meditation. Now, this is something that a lot of people do when it gets to the bad day. But what you really want to do is that you want to be practicing mindful meditation every day, even if this is like a 5-minute meditation that you do. Mindful meditation is training our brain to listen, to understand the cues that our body is sending, to recognize the slightest difference in the way that we're feeling and the way that we're thinking, so that we can more easily detach from our inner critic and be able to listen to it nonetheless. It helps us develop a kinder relationship with ourselves. Mindfulness meditation involves sitting quietly and focusing on our breath, allowing thoughts to come up and to go afterward with no judgment. If you're new to meditation, there are apps like Headspace or Calm that can provide guided meditations to help you get started. For my clients, we look at what exactly it is that they're stuck on, because all of us have different things that our inner critic accuses us of. And then I create a personalized meditation for that specific person, for the particular things that they need to be able to say to the inner critic and release from their body. because talk therapy is great, but it's also important to recognize that a lot of the things that keep coming up is pain that is trapped in our body, and that also needs to go. Over time, practicing mindful meditation can help us become more present and less reactive to our inner critic. Then, of course, there's journaling. And as I've shared before, I'm not great at this one. It's not my top choice because I can't be as consistent with it as I want. But this is me practicing self-forgiveness and not giving into the polarity. In the past, I didn't journal at all because I couldn't journal every day. But writing is one of the top ways that we release our hang-ups, that we express our emotional angst. And so I allow myself to keep a journal, even if it's not consistent, and I use it in those days so that I can process my emotions and I can gain perspective. When your inner critic is loud, try writing down what it's saying. Then challenge those thoughts with kindness and understanding. For me, it helps me to think in terms of what I would say to a friend. For example, if your inner critic says, "You're not a good mother," you might respond with, "I'm doing my best." And that is enough. And you know why I like journaling so much? It helps us identify our own thinking and the patterns that are happening underneath, and to develop a more compassionate self-talk over time. It also allows us to go back and see how we used to talk to ourselves. So when we're in a really bad day and we're thinking that we're at our lowest and we believe that we haven't made any progress, we are able to go back and say, wow, my inner critic was louder and it was meaner. It's particularly awful with me today, but it used to be even worse. It makes sense that I'm doing this process. And then that gives us inspiration to keep on going, to keep on trying, to keep on applying, because we start to see the difference. Another thing that is really important is reaching out, connecting with a friend, even though it feels like at that time you really don't want to share the darkness that you're in. One, because you don't want to bring them down, and two, because it's just too painful. But today I called a friend with an intention to just not talk about my stuff, with an intention to just listen to her news so that I would just forget. But instead, I told her how I was feeling and I allowed myself to cry, and she held me by listening and letting me know that it was okay. But other than friends, we can also speak to family members or be part of community groups. For me, it's been really helpful to share with other mothers and other women in containers where each of us is held and there's an expert. And also I enlist the help of my therapist. All of this provides relief and it offers new perspective. When you're feeling overwhelmed, talking about what you're going through can help you feel less alone. Now, I'm doing a lot of things simultaneously, but this may seem overwhelming, and I didn't add all of this on at the same time. I wasn't always so open with friends, and I wasn't able to feel okay with being vulnerable like that in front of family members. I was not sure if being in a community of other moms would make me feel worse because I'd feel guilty and because I'd think they're better than me, which is not the case. When you go into a container created by someone who cares, it's a safe space and you're able to see and receive so much compassion. So that was beautiful. And although I've been working with parents, moms, dads, and couples on a more individualized level, that is what has inspired me to create one of my own containers where mothers can come together in order to share these experiences so that we can validate all of this, so that we can work through it together. It is really impactful whether you do it individually or you do it with a group. But it really makes a difference to be able to see that other women are there with you, holding your hand. Don't be afraid to reach out for help when you need it. There's strength in acknowledging that you can't do it on your own. Then again, what really helps and what I use are activities and small little things that we can do daily to connect back with ourselves, to nurture our soul, to take care of our bodies and our minds, so that we can recharge and reclaim our balance. I have created the Self-Connect calendar, and honestly, as I was creating it, I was doing it to help clients of mine who needed some ideas and they wanted quotes and affirmations that would help them in this process. I didn't create it initially for myself, but full disclaimer, I've been using it myself quite a bit because in those difficult days, I also will forget the tips and the tricks, and I'll also need the inspiration. And so here are some of the things that you will find in there. If you want, you can download it. I'll have it in my show notes. It's markelakaplani.com/self-connect calendar. But here's a sneak peek. Take a walk out in nature. And if you can just take off your shoes and touch the ground a little bit. Take a warm bath. Light a candle and allow yourself to just take the scent in, if that's something that you like. Read a page or two from your favorite book. Put on your hand cream and allow yourself to feel the nourishment and to smell the scent. Do anything that brings you joy and peace. Taking care of ourselves is not selfish. It is necessary, and it is what keeps us going. Make time for yourself, even if it's just a few minutes in the morning or before you go to bed or at the time that your toddler is napping before you rush to do all the chores that have been waiting all day. Because taking care of yourself allows you to show up more fully for others as well. But most importantly, it calms your inner critic. It puts you in a state of calm and peace so that your inner critic doesn't have as much room to take over. Moving on, what I find is critical, even though by itself is not enough, is a reminder that we're not going to be perfect and that our expectations need to be realistic. Give yourself permission to be mediocre. For me, that's a very big pain point. And it would be okay to be mediocre at one or two things, maybe not. But there are those days where I feel like I'm mediocre or less in just about everything. And I make that not be okay. But perfectionism, this kind of perfectionism where I need to at least excel with flying colors, it fuels the inner critic. So it's important there to stop, to understand what's going on, and to embrace the idea that good enough is enough. Focus on progress rather than perfection. Celebrate your achievements, no matter how small they are. Be gentle with yourself when things don't go as planned. One way that I get very hard on myself is in days or in weeks that I am very overwhelmed, that there's much more work than usual, I become more snappy. And I might be more forgiving with myself if I'm snappy once. But if in a day I become snappy more than once, then I get really down on myself. Because, of course, like any mother, like any parent, I feel like my child doesn't deserve this. It's not their fault that I have filled my schedule to the brim or that something happened the week before. Maybe my child was sick and I was able to work half the time, and so now I have to make up for it this week, and that's why I'm overwhelmed. It's still not his fault that he got sick, right? So why should he be receiving the snappiness? Well, then when I take a breath and I'm able to recognize what has been happening, and I'm able to sit down for just 2 minutes of deep mindful breathing, and then I close the night with hugs and cuddles, with apologizing, with reading a book, and seeing how we have both calmed down and we have ended the day on a beautiful note, it's really important to say that this day wasn't a failure overall. It's important to say, I was able to turn it around. It's important to recognize in that moment something that I haven't always been able to do, but I see the value when I am able to do it. To recognize that, again, it's not black or white. The first half or the first 75% of the day didn't go too well. It had a few notes of total negativity that I feel bad about, that I feel guilty about. Guilt is an alert. It means that I'm not doing things the way that I want to. But that's okay. I took the alert. And did I do something with it? Yes, I did. So if I am going to look at it in percentage, then the day was awful. But if I look at it in terms of, did I learn from this experience? Did I take the guilt as an alert and understand what it meant and turn it into something better instead of allow it to fester into shame and pull me even further down so that I would show up even worse because that's what happens when we're shameful and when we're beating down on ourselves. I can't show up any better from that frame of mind. It's really important to say, yes, I did it. I was able to say, that's it. How can I at least close the day on a beautiful note? And I did it. Finally, the sixth strategy is to focus on the present. The inner critic will try to throw at us all the past mistakes that we've done as proof that we really need to be held accountable and that we need to be punished in some shape or form so that we learn to do better. Because then it also points to the future and tells us that these are all the awful things that could happen if you are not a good parent, if you're not showing up in the way that you're supposed to. What we owe to ourselves to do in that moment is to ground ourselves in the here and now and take it one step at a time, because otherwise we feel helpless as we look to the past, and we feel overwhelmed and drowning if we're looking to the future and all the things we have to do from now on to fix all the past mistakes and to ensure that we prevent all those other things that could end up in disaster. When you're feeling overwhelmed, it can be really helpful to just break things down and understand that in the now, what can I do right now in this moment? And a lot of times, what the answer is for me in that moment is to take a very deep breath, or 5 or 10, and to say, how can I respond in a way that is more aligned with my values, in a way that I feel is good enough. This can make it easier to stay focused and avoid getting lost in negative thinking. And that's where I go back to mindfulness techniques and deep breathing exercises and muscle relaxation, grounding exercises. All of that helps us stay present and calm. So, as I wrap up this episode, I want to remind you that feeling this way doesn't make you any less of a person, any less of a mother, any less of a father, any less of anything. It makes you real. And in this reality, there's beauty and there's strength. Thank you for listening today. I don't know who's listening and I can't see you, but I have this feeling that being in your earbuds, you've embraced me in this vulnerable moment, and I really thank you for being here. I hope that sharing my experience and offering these strategies that I use to pick myself up and to slowly mend my pieces and to then develop into a slightly better version, and better is not closer to perfect, but it is closer to human. I hope that all of this has provided some comfort and some guidance for you as well. And I hope that if you try any of this, you will get back to me and let me know how it went and how it felt. I'm going to close by saying this. It's okay to have bad days. It's okay to struggle. And it's more than okay to seek help and support. If you found this episode helpful, share it with someone who might need to hear this today. And as always, feel free to reach out to me. All of my details are in the show notes or in the description below. And my website is markelakaplani.com, and you'll find all the details you need if you want to get in touch. And if you want to support me in this, please go ahead and give me a review on Apple Podcasts. It means the world to me. Until next time, take care of yourself. Be gentle with yourself. You are enough. You're enough.